Studies at the United States. We have Ms. Mounia Boussetta, who's Senior Fellow at the Policy Center for the New South Morocco. We have Mr. Rajiv Gawdat, who's former Member of Parliament from India. And lastly, we have Ms. Ornella Kuchi, who's Vice President at ICAR Holdings in Albania. Thank you all for joining us for this panel discussion today. Thank you to our audience. And may I now hand over to Verena. Verena, over to you.
Thank you, Tanubi. Welcome to the panel on Rethinking Energy Transitions and Powering Tomorrow's Growth. I'm very happy you made it here after lunch. I'm also very, very happy to welcome all of my distinguished guests today in this discussion. You've just been introduced by Tanubi, so I will not repeat that to save a little bit of time, because we don't have a lot of time today. We are 6 panelists. The topic is quite extensive, so may I ask you to be brief where you can. I will open with a question to each of you, and then we'll go into a more synergistic discussion. But before that, let me give you a little bit of background around the energy transition. We gathered here not just to discuss energy, but to explore the future, a future shaped by collaboration, innovation, and a shared responsibility to our planet, from Yerevan to the world. Today, we are taking a look at regional energy politics, innovative ways of procuring and harnessing energy, and their implications for international geopolitical patterns. What is the status of the Energy Transition Index and what needs to be done? While there may be various stances towards the ongoing energy transition, some driven by fear, some driven by entrenched economic and geopolitical patterns, energy security, equitable access to energy, along with ensured long-term viability of energy sources and the transition to sustainable energy, are at the very, very center of a more and more entrenched debate. What types of energy are clean? Who has access to clean energy, clean technologies, and consistent energy supplies? Is that access just? We need energy to maintain our levels of comfort, prosperity, and productivity. At the same time, we consume more energy than ever before, and at levels that are not sustainable from a global long-term view. So let's delve right in. With nations as diverse as India, the United States, Albania, Lithuania here on stage, and Armenia, we need to recognize that the energy transition brings different challenges to the respective doorsteps of different nations. Thus, there cannot be a one-size-fits-all solution. We may need a diverse spectrum of voices, perspectives, policies, and most importantly, actions. Let's start with Armenia. Mr. Vardanyan. Our gracious host country today, Armenia, is a perfect gathering place. It symbolizes the crossroads of Europe and Asia, and it serves as a perfect backdrop for a gathering of minds from different regions. What are the challenges you see in Armenia today that it uniquely faces when it comes to transitioning to a more sustainable energy landscape? What are the implications for the industrial sectors here, agriculture, mining? Out of the 100 countries in the Energy Transition Index, Armenia currently has a score of 79. What do you think that means? What can be done? What needs to be done here while ensuring economic prosperity in the region and energy security?
Thank you very much for the question. I'll try to be very short. But initially, I would like to introduce where Armenia stands at the beginning, like in 5 years ago from now, when we started our energy transition. Armenia had a very diversified electricity production. In contrast with other countries in the region, we were producing like 30% of our energy from hydro sources, 35% from nuclear, and 35% from thermal power plants, gas-powered plants. And when we started our energy transition, our challenges was, first of all, Armenia, you know, is even not a middle income country, and the first challenge was the prices for renewable sources, and the affordable one from renewable sources was solar energy production, and we started towards solar energy production, and I can say that we have very great potential, and we are now in a very good position right now, because if in 2018 we didn't have any kilowatt hours produced from solar panels, right now we have 630 megawatts of installed capacity of solar panels in the country, and sometimes during the daytime they produce more than 50% of our electricity during the daytime. But the challenges with the solar panels is non-flexibility of our electric system. Our system is too small, and we don't have much interconnection lines with our neighbors. We are working in parallel only with one neighbor, with our southern neighbor, with Iran, and that's not enough as of now to develop this source of electricity production as much as we can. And we're trying to solve these kind of issues, and there are solutions, and we're going towards these solutions, and we have strong belief and strong decision to go to 100% green country to become, because we are a landlocked country without any fossil fuels, and it's crucial for us to have energy independence and not be dependent from any country in terms of energy regimes and in terms of importing fossil fuels.
Thank you very much for that insight into the Armenian stance here. Do you believe that while you're looking away from certain imported energy sources at the moment, what are the more concrete solutions that you see for Armenia? You mentioned solar power. What else is on your list here?
Right now we are working on developing wind power plant projects in Armenia. The main challenge with wind power plants is high capital costs. I think this is going to be decreasing in upcoming years, and it will also be available for us as a source. And also we are building an interconnection lines with our neighboring countries, new lines, which will allow us to be more flexible, and during the daytime when we are experiencing excess capacities of electricity, send to neighboring country and get back it in the evening time. And also we are developing our legislation which will allow good conditions for energy storages work, and battery storages, hydro pump storages, and hydrogen as a storage for electricity will have an opportunity to work in our market. And this will allow us to more increase solar production and other renewable energy production.
Thank you. That looks like you're building out an arsenal of tools that you can use in bringing about this change. If we look a little bit further to the north, Mr. Norvidas, welcome. You are the head of the Climate Change Mitigation Center and part of the Lithuanian Energy Agency. Where does Lithuania stand in your view? It has a score of 24 on the Energy Transition Index, so rather high up. What do you think is your role in leading this transition, in helping other countries maybe learn from what you're doing? Where can Lithuania learn from other countries?
Hello there, it's nice to be here. Yes, we see our future in Lithuania as green, sustainable, independent, and that is the main drivers for our policy decision makers and overall energy system development plans. So we have, in our 30 years of independence, we have always had this task in mind to be as energetically independent as possible, because we had only one option, and one supplier of most of our energy needs. So we have very actively strived to diversify our energy sources, our energy types, because in Lithuania we have very few hydropower plants, only one big one. We have lots of forests which supply enough of biomass for our heating sector, but talking about electricity, we were up until the closure of our atomic power plant about 15 years ago. We were one of the biggest regional exporters of electricity. And when we closed it, of course, we became one of the biggest importers of electricity. But during this period of 15 years, we have invested a lot of effort and money to diversify our electricity generation capacities. And we have developed quite substantial park of wind power plants and solar power plants, which enable us to generate about 45 to 50% of electricity right now.
So that leads over perfectly to my next question to you. With nuclear power back in the discussion in Europe at least, how do you see Lithuania's role in leading that change with the closure of the Ignalina nuclear power plant, I think in 2009 that you just mentioned?
Yes. We are ever looking forward, and we have adopted our new national energy independence strategy just a month or so ago. And there we have our goals to introduce small and SMRs, I can't remember, small, medium modular reactors, sorry. Small modular reactors, but at first we will need to see whether they are, of course, viable in terms of electricity costs and other involved additional requirements such as safety, and of course you still need fuel, and where you put this fuel and how you dispose of it and so on. So we have, as I mentioned, closed our nuclear power plant, and we will be decommissioning it until 2057. So the timescales are very large for these technologies.
So you think there is a road to introducing these smaller power plants back into the energy mix for Lithuania?
There are intentions, yes.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's go to our next guest. Mr. Gawdat Bahgat, if I may continue with you. So the United States has a score of only 19 on the ETI, Energy Transition Index. What do you think influences energy transition decisions in the US, especially in the light of the upcoming elections? Do you think there will be a rollback of certain progress that may have been made? Do you think it will remain stable? What do you expect to see in terms of the American energy policy for the coming years?
First, I have to say, because I work for the United States government, everything I say is my own opinion, does not represent the official policy of the United States. Second, in this room, how many of you do not believe in climate change? Okay. I'm very glad.
We're in a bubble here, but...
I'm very glad because I will first for 1 or 2 minutes talk about energy security, and then we'll focus on United States. I have been working on energy for more than 35 years, and the best definition I found for energy security was adapted by International Energy Agency in Paris. They defined energy security in 4 terms. The first one, it is geology. If you have oil, gas, you have security. If you do not, there is no energy security. Second part is economics. The price has to be right. If it is too expensive, there is less security. third part of the definition, geopolicy. Oil and gas are the lifeblood of modern civilization. This is why oil is not only economic commodity, there is a lot of policy behind oil. And number 4 and last one is environmental. The source of energy should not pollute the environment. And this will take us to energy transition. For United States, probably 19 is not bad, higher than 26 and higher than Armenia, so it's not bad. But for United States, I can talk at least 3 reasons why United States is not number 1 or number 2. One of them, geography. United States is a very large country. Because of this, car is necessity. In many countries, only rich people own cars. In United States, most people have to have at least 1 car, and many families have to have 2 cars. Because United States, like Canada, like Australia, very large country, we do not have good public transportation. In big cities like where I live, Washington, D.C. or New York City, there is good public transportation. You can manage without car. But in many parts of United States, car is necessity. I mean, when I immigrated to United States, I found it funny. Street beggars, but they have cars. This is not the case in many other countries. So for physical reasons, United States has to consume oil, gasoline, petroleum. Second most important, and this is why I asked how many of you do not believe in climate change. In the United States, climate change has been politicized. I strongly believe climate change is about science. It is not about policy. But in the United States, it's about policy. I don't know how many of you watched the debate, 5 a.m. today. I watched it, and one part of the debate was about fracking in Pennsylvania, swing state, very important, and the 2 candidates strongly support fracking. President Trump withdrew from Paris agreement. President Biden joined the Paris agreement, but under Biden administration, United States produces more oil than ever. President Biden went to Saudi Arabia to basically beg for more oil production. Pollution does not stop at the borders. You cannot fight pollution at home and ask other countries to produce more oil. I'm talking about oil because oil, gas, and coal produce more than 75% of pollution. So we cannot fight climate change without reducing dependency on fossil fuel. So politicization of climate is the second reason. Third reason and last reason is China factor. It is very hard to fight climate change without working with China. China produces the cheapest solar panels, electric cars, batteries. Chinese products are the cheapest. And in the United States, how to create jobs, we are imposing sanctions, taxes on China. This reduces the price, making fighting climate change much harder. So these
do
are...
you foresee that with the upcoming election, one of the candidates will take a very different stance on this? Do you foresee Is there maybe investment in the public transport sector so that there is no reliance on cars anymore, or not anymore, but less reliance on cars? Do you foresee something like that, for example, if Kamala Harris was elected? Or do you think that there will be a very familiar line on?
In few words, I believe the way for United States to improve its record is Europe is much ahead of United States in climate change. European green parties have always been very strong, and the way for United States to reduce its pollution, United States has the highest pollution per capita. The way is to more education, more pressure from bottom up. I do not expect the politicians now will make major change. I believe the change will come when more Americans put pressure on our leaders to go more to renewable energy and less pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. If I may continue with you, Mrs. Buzeta, you hail from Morocco. Morocco's ETI is 65 out of 120, which is quite impressive in its region. Morocco imports 90% of its energy, with oil and gas dominating its energy mix. It has become a leader in renewable energy in the region, with 37% of its electricity generated from renewables as of 2022. And the Noor solar complex has a capacity of 580 megawatt, which is an astounding capacity, and one of the largest concentrated solar power plants globally. So solar power presents as one of the solutions, one of the cheapest forms of renewable energy that we currently have. Do you think Morocco could take a leadership in this regionally or globally? And how do you see the energy mix in Morocco developing?
Thank you very much. Just I want to thank the organizer for giving me the opportunity to take part, which is an interesting dialogue. So as you said, since 2009, Morocco implemented its strategy for energy transition. It wasn't choice, but necessity to strengthen its energy security. And as you said, Morocco is importing almost all its needs on energy. So the ambition is to achieve 52% of the electricity mix should be coming from renewables, solar, wind, and hydropower. And currently, the capacity installed are about 4.6 gigawatts. It's expected to be about 15 gigawatts by 2027. So it's a very ambitious program, and there are many factors that facilitate this situation. The first one is the global framework, which offers conditions for investors. The second point is the low cost of electricity produced from solar or wind compared to other regions, thanks to the very favorable weather conditions. And the third point is related to the competitiveness of Morocco's logistic and industrial platforms. Donc, all these are key factors that facilitate the implementation of strategy. But there are still some challenges. The first one, Morocco is engaging different measures to stimulate private sector, because all the investments until now are mostly coming from public sectors. So we are stimulating private sector to invest more, to develop the supply chain, to develop the industry. That is very important to create more resilience. And we are also investing to reinforce our infrastructures, particularly the grid, the capacity of distribution of storage, and to master relevant technologies. So that are the main challenges that we should invest on. In terms of new perspectives, as it was said, the green hydrogen presents a great potential to be one of promising alternative for decarbonizing heavy industry, transportation, and also fertilizer industry. And for that reason, we see that Europe has now started for green hydrogen is key part of its transition strategy, aiming to produce 10 million of tons in Europe and to import 10 million others tons of green hydrogen from outside. So Morocco is recognized to have the capacity to be player of this global market of green hydrogen due to its capacity and potential to produce green hydrogen with very competitive cost, as I said, coming from solar and wind, but also because he developed very good interconnectivity with Europe in terms of logistics, in terms of grid. Morocco has connection with Spain and Portugal. So that's create a very interesting momentum to develop a new area of green hydrogen. Until now, we have a very attractive framework that is, and we are mobilizing about 1 million hectares of lands to be allocated to the development of the green hydrogen, because as you know, the developing green hydrogen is very capitalistic and needs very large spaces. Many foreign investors announced their interest to invest in Morocco, but I think the major investor now is OCP. It's world's leading Moroccan leading producer of fertilizer based on phosphate, who will invest in green hydrogen, about 1 million ton to produce green ammonia by 2027, and about 10 million ton, 3 million ton by 2032.
Thank you so much for this
yes,
picture.
that's the global picture, but I have to mention that for green hydrogen, the technology is not still mastered. The costs are still very high, but I think for next decade, that will be a very good competitiveness and maybe new area of investment. Thank you.
Certainly a collective challenge, getting investment into these types of technologies. So you mentioned looking to Europe for inspiration on where to go in your energy transition journey. Which other countries do you build relationships with? How do you see your more regional role, maybe in Africa? Maybe one sentence to that, and then we'll go over to Mr. Gawdat.
Just, I think as we are nearest to Europe, as I said, we will have the opportunity to have connection with many countries. Okay, now it's okay? It's okay, it's working? So as I said, as we are nearest to Europe, we have...
Closer maybe to the mic, or does it work for
you? Okay. So as I said, we have the opportunity to have connection with the south of Europe, in Mediterranean region, especially, as I said, Europe and Spain and Portugal, and also in the northwest of Africa, because we have also many others, how can I say, interconnection in railways and others that can help to implement a hub, regional hub, in green hydrogen or in green energy to be shipped to other parts of the world. So we are in connection thanks to our geolocalization. Thank you.
Thank you. A warm welcome also to Mr. Gawdat. Great to have you here. You represent India tonight. India's ETI is at 63 out of 120. And India, of course, we know that has a wholly different set of challenges than many of the other panelists here have. A growing population that demands energy, and also, of course, the need to maybe make that economic growth that you're striving towards, make that a more sustainable one than the Western nations have managed to. So if we're looking at India, India consumes 6% of the world's primary energy at the moment, with 55% of its electricity still generated from coal. It has already achieved 175 gigawatt of renewable energy capacity as of 2022, with solar contributing 62 gigawatt and wind 40. For context, 1 megawatt is roughly the amount of electricity needed to power about 100 homes in what we call the more developed countries. 1 gigawatt can power roughly 1 million homes. India aims for 500 gigawatts of renewable capacity by 2030, with solar expected to reach 300 gigawatts. India's carbon intensity per GDP is set out to be reduced by 45% by 2030, compared to the 2005 levels, and it looks to reach net zero by 2070. So, as a former member of the Indian Parliament, what is your view on the challenges here from a policy perspective? What do you think can be done, and what needs to be done?
Thank you. Those are big questions. We are the fifth largest economy in the world. We've got 1.4 billion people, large numbers, more than a billion, who are, by most definitions, poor, everyone eager to participate in a better quality of life, which is going to be energy intensive. Now, 55% coal, but overall 75% fossil fuel usage as of now. The net zero target of 2070 is too far away. So what we've done is we've actually committed ourselves to 2030, which is day after tomorrow, right? So basically, we are aggressively moving on multiple fronts to try and change the way we move forward. One advantage that we have is that a lot of the investments that need to be made in the, in terms of the energy domain, ecosystem, are yet to be made. For example, for the newer cities. So all of these give us an opportunity to make this massive switch. For example, we are also betting on green hydrogen. And our big industrialists are essentially committing to focusing on that particular source and to reduce the cost to around $2 per ton, or whatever that exact measure is. So there is a concerted effort. And when it comes to renewables, so we have basically said that 50% of our energy will come from renewables by 2030. We will reach 500 gigawatts of installed capacity by 2030, of which, as you pointed out, 175 has already been achieved. So here, it's going to involve a lot of investment. When it comes to solar, we import our panels from China substantially, right? So we haven't got an alternative indigenous industry going forward. We're quite adept at managing traditional fossil fuels, because even in this very complicated geopolitical environment, we've been buying discounted fuel from Russia. We've got the US to waive some sanctions on Venezuela to get some crude from there. So we're playing that game, but we're very, very firmly focused on the future, partly because the lessons of climate change, the impacts, are staring us in the face. We've seen this year heat waves across the country. During our large national election, I think about 35 officials on poll duty died of heat stroke. That's one. That was followed by flooding, and including urban flooding, which killed people. We're seeing landslides in fragile hill areas. So as far as we are concerned, this needs action, and action now. Now, the investment, where is that going to come from? What all are we going to focus on? So one dimension is, of course, green hydrogen. Another is energy storage. We're trying to invest in batteries in a big way, because as a nation, we have the landscape and the geography that someone mentioned to certainly support renewables, solar, wind, hydel of various kinds, hydroelectric of various kinds. All of those are eminently doable without much environmental cost. So those are part of our mix. We are also a nation with a long tradition of recycling. So this whole notion of circularity, finding ways to reuse materials, all of that is certainly part of our agenda as well. And when we talk about green hydrogen and alternative energy sources, we're talking about decarbonizing the industrialization that is yet to happen as well, what is already there and what is yet to happen. So those are some of the dimensions of our approach. But in terms of tangible things that I have seen and been involved in inaugurations, we've just introduced 1,000 electric buses, in different fleets across the country. And we've got, that's a very large number.
It's a large number, but for India,
for India, it's nothing. It's nothing. But a lot of people use public transport as well, right? So that's the way I think as our urban design moves forward and we adopt these kinds of technologies, I think we'll be in a position to do a lot more. Our bigger challenges are what we would call just transition, right? We have about 3.5 million people employed in the coal sector. right? And what's going to happen to them if we are going to switch, right? So can we embark on a massive green jobs skilling initiative that will help move towards people who can work in the larger renewable domain?
Absolutely.
So those sorts of challenges are also those that are confronting us.
Hundred thousands of jobs worldwide are going to come from investment into green energy sectors, if we look at that. And so that's a challenge for all of us, transitioning these
Yeah.
workers in these old traditional industries towards that and upskilling them or reskilling them in ways where they can be useful in furthering this transition.
Yeah, and then in India, agriculture generates only about 15% of GDP, but more than 50% of our population still lives off agriculture. And because of a variety of policy measures, we over-harvest groundwater, we misuse free electricity. So there, adopting solar is probably going to change the game. We are also going to have to invest in the new grid infrastructure, which can enable
Absolutely.
all this decentralized producers to
Just
also make some
in
extra
light
money.
of the timing, I will have to cut you off here. Although we could probably talk about India all evening when it comes to these challenges. But I mean, making the agricultural sectors that are still very dependent on fossil fuels and coal more sustainable is a challenge for most of the nations on this panel. So maybe that's something we can speak about after we speak to our last panelist, Ms. Kuchi. It's a pleasure having you here as well. You have a private sector background, so maybe you also would love to dive into what the two panelists before you said, touching on investments in the sector and how that can change regions' trajectory and also maybe supercharge the transition in certain areas. You come from Albania. Albania has a score of 43 on the ETI. It produces 98% of its electricity from hydropower, and it imports 30 to 40% during its dry seasons. You mentioned before you would like to speak to the region rather than Albania itself, so please feel free to take a more regional approach and tell us how you see the regional trajectory of the energy transition in the Balkans.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, and I want to thank also ORF and the government of Armenia having us here and organizing such a very good event. It's really hard to talk behind you because I will talk from a country 1.5 billion to, for example, Montenegro, which is only 600,000 inhabitants. So, but let's try to explain how it is to be in the middle of developed countries like European countries and African. And I will talk about Balkans. And Balkans, they are 6 countries with big problems, small budgets and small countries in the meantime. And so I will separate here Albania about the energy because we are producing 100%, almost 100% renewable energy because we are blessed with waters by nature. And as every blessing, we didn't manage well. And so we are the first one attacked country, the most attacked country in Europe for climate change because of our floods. But in the meantime, historically the region has relied on coal and energy imports. Except now, in this moment. And why now? Cause of 2 points. The first one, it's the energy crisis. And all our region focused themselves in the energy. But as we are masters of art in the crisis management, but not in the sustainability, we couldn't manage to have sustainability on this crisis, on the energy crisis. And the second one it's about the EU obligations. So all our 6 countries, they are obliged to transpose and to implement the European legislation. And this European legislation, for example, for the chapter 27, the climate change and environmental chapter, our transposition is almost 50 to 60% in all regions. Our implementation is less than 10%. So it's a huge gap between the transposition and the implementation. Why? Because even EU is obliging us, but they have these double principles. They are talking about green. Everything is green now, green transport, green economy, green energy, green everything, even green food. But as they are paying and they are, let's say, having grants for their inhabitants, for the European inhabitants, about 2,500 euros per inhabitant. For our region, which has candidate countries for the Europe, it's 154 euros. So this big, let's say, gap of money also with this big obligation that we have to transpose, it's huge. In the meantime, we are countries that we have historically problems by producing renewable energy. And I have here to bring the case of North Macedonia, Serbia, and Kosovo. They are producing more CO2 than all Europe, 7 times more CO2 than all Europe, because of their power plants, and they are very old. All the technology without innovation, zero renewable energy.
So how do you believe can we incentivize a switch to a more sustainable energy here?
The last problem, and we are talking a lot about the energy efficiency, but the region, in some points, we are losing up to 30% of our energy in transmission. So even this is a big problem. And what we need, how we can fix all this. The first one, funds. It's everywhere, it's a must. The second one, we need significant investment, especially outlined infrastructure, outdated infrastructure. The second one, collaboration. And I'm not talking about only the collaboration between the private sector and the government, and also the universities and academia. But in the meantime, I'm talking about collaboration between our countries, our small countries. Because every country, it's acting like an island, an isolated island. But with this, we can find the way how to increase our funds, to increase our capacities, and to produce more, and to help each other. In the meantime, we need to educate and reskilling programs in our universities. In Albania, we don't have a single program in climate change, nothing, zero. We have in all Balkans only one in Serbia, and in it's a master degree. So, and I will close with a sentence. When the public and the private sectors team up, it's like the perfect marriage. Each brings something unique to the table, and together they create a future that is sustainable, successful, and by our surprise, smooth, with far fewer arguments about who left the lights on. Thank you.
Thank you for this contribution. Having heard all these different perspectives, different challenges, we can still see that the shared urgency is there for each and all of us. And we need to see what are the ways that we can collaborate and actually bring about change actively, proactively together. One certain thing is, of course, redistribution of funds towards nations that need them, that actually already feel the changes, the vulnerable 20. These things, having a more just energy transition than it currently is, with an eye to the time and in the light of all of us wanting to contribute to these questions, may I ask you to really only answer if you have a specific thing in mind. So when you look at international collaboration, what would be your wish on the international level? What is your wish looking towards OPEC? How do you see its development currently? And perhaps how do you see its view in hindering or hopefully in the long term also pushing forward the climate transition?
I can make 2 brief points here. First, energy transition is not only about climate change, it is also about national security. When you are dependent on foreign supplies, you are vulnerable to the producer of these supplies. This is Europe and Russia, clear example. We are here in Armenia. Armenia depends on Russia for nuclear fuel. Russia can shut off the light. For Armenia's national security, you have to reduce your dependency on Russia or any foreign supply. Second point is the energy transition will not happen overnight. We still need oil and gas. It will take time. It is true that there is a climate emergency, but it is true that we are not ready yet to give up oil and gas. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Okay. So we are in Albania, not only in Albania, I am talking about the whole Balkans. We are transposing legislation just for obligation. We are not collaborating with the private sector. How to implement all this? So we are just transposing and we are not implementing. Because at least in the end, the implementers of all our legislations in the energy sector and in climate change also, it will be the private sector. Without them, we can do nothing. So if the governments, they are not, let's say, giving meaningful public subsidies, guarantees, paying guarantees for the banks, or helping with equity funds, it will be nothing. The private sector in our countries is not so powerful to invest a lot of money in energy, and in the meantime, without the collaboration of the government, putting all this in the public service, it will be nothing.
So you're hoping for more international collaboration when it comes to public-private partnerships in the energy transition?
Exactly.
I mean, yes? Please.
Maybe I can share some thoughts concerning the cooperation and how we think the energy transition. I think there are 3 points to highlight if we want to reconsider and to strengthen relationship and partnership. The first one, the security, the renewables are reshaping the landscape of energy security in the world because there are new actors that are involved in the global system, and that the competition are intensified around critical minerals and the technology leadership. So there is, before it was just producer of oil or fossils that are concerned by the global landscape and its implication at geopolitical level, but now we have new actors in renewable energy. So we have to consider how the situation will be balanced, how can we limit the impact or the influence that have impacted the global world globally. And the second point for me is the pace of energy transition. It still remains very low. And we have to consider what can be the driver where we should work together, and how can all the stakeholders concerned, we talk about financing, we talk about research, we talk about development, progress of technology. So we think to reassess, to see if you want to meet the global targeted that as it was fixed by Paris Agreement, we should reassess our way to do the transition and what are the best way to be more effective and to implement the energy transition.
So when we look at the energy targets for 2030 that were announced at COP28, tripling renewable energy capacity, doubling the rate of energy efficiency, and transitioning away from fossil fuels, how realistic does it look for your countries? In a 2 to 5 word answer, if possible.
So according to my country, Albania, we engaged ourselves to have less 52% emissions until 2050. And I asked my prime minister, it will be Albania in the stone area because we are 100% renewable energy production. So how it will be on this? Probably all the governments has to talk more about, not only with academians and not only with research, but even with the private sector. Because if they are not collaborating, they are giving, let's say, wrong data to the government. And the wrong data they are producing wrong challenges and wrong also obligations. I don't think that this is eligible.
Realistic for
This
the
is not,
Balkans,
yes,
yes.
for sure.
Mr. Vardanyan, may I ask you to answer that from an Armenian perspective as well?
Mike.
It's only just need to go closer, probably. It's on. Just come closer.
Thank you very much. I think Armenia is in a good shape in terms of doing international obligations, particularly Paris Agreement obligations about decreasing CO2 emissions. And for example, for this, we have decided to have 1,000 megawatt hours of solar panels until 2030. Right now, we have 630 now. We are in 24. And I think in 2 years, we will reach our goal, 1,000 megawatt. And we could even do better if the system allowed us. And the only problem is system flexibility. We're solving these issues, and I think until 2030 we will have more. And also, we are implementing other policies towards electric vehicles. There are certain privileges acquiring electric vehicle in Armenia, which will also help us to get these goals, and also we are subsidizing everybody who is doing refurbishment of its building, home, and everything with an energy efficiency tools and using energy efficiency materials in the refurbishment of their homes. I think all these tools will help us to reach even better results than we aim to. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe from a Lithuanian perspective as well?
Yes, we are well aware of the stricter targets set, and being a part of European Union, we are quite well prepared because we have the advantage of learning from our peers, and this international collaboration, it really helps when we are talking about the highest targets to achieve, so generation of electricity from renewables. Transport sector is very much the biggest issue for us, but we have programs and funding in place to achieve our targets set. So the knowledge, know-how which we got from our colleagues in older Western European countries very much helped us to develop our strategies, and right now we are finalizing our National Energy Climate Action Plan, which will serve us as a platform for launching all these programs and initiatives for supporting renewables and, more importantly, increasing energy security and energy efficiency, because if you do not conserve electricity that you produced, it just goes to waste and the whole chain collapses.
Thank you. Yes, one sentence?
Yeah.
One sentence, and then we
Yeah.
come to the US.
Okay.
Okay, I have been part of at least 10 COP in 10 years. And I have realized that in every COP we are saying the same things. And probably we all should think about this kind of sentences that our prime ministers, everyone is saying on the COP, and what they are deciding. And if we have even to think if COP is necessary to be every year, what we are changing, except we are losing a lot of money and a lot of energy.
So you're looking for more tangible effects and policy results from COP. I think all of us
Just to
would
be
wish
more
for that.
effective.
All of us would wish for that.
Yeah. Okay, I would like to
How do
give credit to my colleague from India. Former Indian Prime Minister once said, India was not part of the problem, but India wants to be part of the solution. And this is why international cooperation is must. The war in Gaza, Israel and Arab countries, if they work together, again, pollution does not stop at political borders. Here in Armenia, Armenia agreed that the COP29 will be held in Azerbaijan. There must be international cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a perfect transition into the last question I have for you today. How do you see the unjust effects of our growth in the West that are now borne by the vulnerable 20, but also places like India? What are ways that we maybe can make this transition more just for countries that are affected by our growth 50 years ago, 80 years ago, when we were not using energy as clean as we are aiming to use now?
Yeah, first we need to think about the vulnerable countries. India is a very large country, we can cope. But the small island states, others whose very existence is threatened, what are we going to do about them? How do we provide the kinds of resources that will help them cope? That's, I think, that has to be a top priority. Apart from that, if the developed countries with their extraordinary capital resources were to think about the benefits that would come from investment, it could be in offsets. Countries like India have enough space and enough possibilities to help decarbonize, or create carbon sinks. The kinds of technologies that that are innovated, we can scale their implementation in a way that makes a huge difference. Because while we are going to keep growing, we are also going to keep emitting. And every ton of carbon dioxide that you can prevent us from emitting makes a huge difference. So I would think that, and then you were talking about OPEC. Well, if you look at what the private sector oil companies are doing, some of them are becoming, they're focusing on renewables. They've got enough resources again to aggressively diversify and invest and help make these technological transitions. We are actually betting that whether it's storage or green hydrogen, that these technologies will be available to us at affordable prices in the near future. Just like electric vehicles. We never expected them to be so mainstream so quickly, right? So they were sort of optimistic on these fronts, but I think that's where the kind of investment that's needed could be a win-win for the developed world as well as for everyone who's trying to cope as well.
So bringing the private sector into just energy transition partnerships and things like that might be a way forward. That would probably be a whole different panel, a whole other panel that we'll have to have maybe next year at the Yerevan dialogue. I would like to open this to the audience. Do you have, we have, I think, I don't know, Tanubi, do we have time for 1 or 2 questions? Or 2? Okay, thank you. So, please. Is there?
Yeah, it's coming.
It's coming.
Oh, thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I wish I am eager to be a part of this discussion because I have the honor to represent the Permanent International Secretariat of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation Organization.
Would you also kindly tell us your name, please?
My name is Ashot Kocher, and I'm executive manager of this secretariat of the organization I mentioned, which is a unique platform for dialogue among 13 member states, while in 18 areas of cooperation, including energy, of course. I would like to thank our distinguished panelists for their very comprehensive, informative information and intervention provided. And well, our Albanian colleague mentioned the popularity of the word term green. And as an organization, I would like to say that we pay a special attention to encouraging green energy investments in our BSEC region with the aim of creating a modern energy infrastructure that includes areas with poor access to energy, encouraging, of course, local entrepreneurship in green energy production. And I am convinced that development, I'm so sorry that it will be only 1 or 2 minutes more, because our Secretary General participated in yesterday's panel on connectivity, and he used a very important word. He was speaking about the transport connectivity, and then he used also the energy connectivity term. So, and we are convinced that the development and the progress in this region depends on trilemma, an energy trilemma, stable energy supply, mitigation of environmental impact, and affordability. And just a couple of words about the importance of international, regional cooperation. Of course, increased focus on regional policy dialogue is more than ever required because when we are talking about the energy transition, we know that there are still many uncertainties relating to possible scenarios and development of the global energy sector, which increase the difficulties both on international and regional levels to reach the goal of net zero world.
Okay.
And I am convinced that we have to intensify our efforts to finding innovative approaches for improving cooperation aimed at tackling existing challenges. I'm very sorry for
No,
this
thank you,
small
but
intervention.
thank you
Thanks
for
a lot.
this contribution. But is there a question you have to the panel?
No, I don't have a question.
Okay.
I'm very
Well, then
satisfied.
thank you for the
Just I
contribution.
wanted to say a couple of words
Maybe you could
on behalf
pass.
of the organization.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe you
Thank
can pass the microphone to the lady in red at the back.
Hello, yes, my name is Duneza Skova. I represent the Armenian Foreign Ministry. I'll try to be short. Regarding renewables, as our Deputy Minister kindly mentioned, Armenia is doing very well on solar panel production. My question is the following. Where does the world, or rather science, stand on the issue of reuse of those solar panels or recycling issue? Because several years ago it has been an issue whether in several years how will the world be able to reuse or recycle it? Thank you.
Yeah,
Who would like to take that?
in one word, it is
Closer, maybe? Do you hear him?
Yeah.
No.
In one word, it is diversification. All countries have to diversify the energy mix. One source is not enough. The best solution, little bit of oil, gas, renewable, and nuclear. And this is the way forward. There is no one source is enough.
May I? So
Maybe
we
tomorrow?
live in 2024. We are even able to recycle ourselves. In the last 5 years, yes, they find solution how to recycle the old panels. And there are a lot of factories, even in my country, recycling solar panels. I think even in this area, I don't know, but I think even in this area, there are factories that they are recycling this. Otherwise, you will be obliged from the Paris Agreement to recycle this kind of panels.
Thank you.
Yes, I want to say also that the new project, industrial project, integrated the recycling. So in the choice of technology, you have to find the product that allow the recycling. So we have less products that are not used. So that's the new generation of industrial projects.
Okay, thank you. So there was one question and one contribution. I think we'll close it with maybe a short last sentence from each of you about maybe from the Yerevan dialogue to the world. What would your wish be for the energy transition? What is something that you would wish for the international community to collaborate on more this direction? Thank you.
Thank you. I think Yerevan Dialogue will help all our guests to see our intentions towards not only energy transition but connectivity and connectivity and our efforts towards becoming an regional hub both for energy and transportation. Thank you very much.
These kinds of events are very useful because we have to all speak the same language to understand one another, to help one another. And my hope would be that in the future there would be no dissent in thinking about whether there is or is no climate change, and this might be the first steps taken here.
To fight climate change, we have to address both supply and demand. Most of our talk has been on the supply. On the demand side, we have to emphasize energy efficiency. People have to consume less energy. And second point, I would like also to second what my Albanian colleague said, cooperation between government, private sector, and academia. everything successful in United States is outcome of these three players. There will not be success without government, private sector, and academia.
Thank you. I can just say some few words. This kind of platform dialogue is very important to address complexity, especially because energy transition is a very complex subject, and it needs to join the effort of everyone in different stakeholders. So I think we should continue discussion, we should continue finding the right solution, sharing ideas, and working together. Thank you.
I'd say that a platform like this gives us an opportunity to emphasize that innovations in the broader energy space are global public goods. They should be shared and available to everyone.
We are living in a strange period. You probably have seen yesterday's or today's debate between the candidates for presidents. And we can talk until tomorrow for Paris Agreement, but once Donald Trump is coming, he will be out of the Paris Agreement. And what's the meaning of the Paris Agreement if he will come or another president will come and it will erase everything about the Paris Agreement? So probably it's time to not plan anymore and to not have strategies anymore, because in my country we are just planning to plan, to not be planned and to not be implemented. Probably it's the time that the government should be pure technical in this issue and not political. Thank you.
Thank you all for your perspectives. I think listening to you makes very clear how valuable it is to have such multi-perspective players here, and also how valuable it is to bring all these viewpoints into the plans we'll have to make. I mean, there's this old German statement, a German kind of proverb that says, you can make a great plan and you can make another one, but it will all come very different to what you expected anyway. And I think that's what will happen with climate change. And if we don't act together and act decisively, we'll be reactive and then we can't make any plans anymore. I think that's what we all can agree on. Thank you for having shared this panel with me.
Thank you.